have additional information. I mean, right now what we have is very basic, but we'll have that registration and map and FAQs to be posted. Otherwise, continue on with our litter collection. Well past now 1 million out of 2 million of our cubic yards of our litter collection goals. Moving forward with our projects, we're having cycle 2 of our local grant call for projects this month with additional workshops. So I'll also put a link in the chat with our website with recordings for the workshop. So again, local agencies that are interested, if you know any, please pass on the word to them, though many of them are coming back from cycle 1, which was last year. So this year, $100 million for cycle 2 grants for projects and $300 million in cycle 1. And then moving forward, also other beautification projects on our state right away. And our public education campaign is going to formally launch in March. We're doing, I think my understanding is some holiday type media spend, but the actual launch will be in March. We're also having a partnership with the Kings and Clippers to promote Clean California. So you'll see our logo up on the Kings games. That's the Sacramento Kings during road and home games, including, I think we're doing a half court event in Sacramento on March 3rd. That's Friday. So anyways, a lot going on. I'll pass it over to Jana.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be back. And again, congrats, Win, and welcome back to our time. But I don't have any trashy updates, but just ready to jump back in. I'll pass it over to Julian.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, kind of similar and just affiliation Sac State. And I guess I'll be presenting a little bit more detail next time on our citizen science data ingestion tool, and looking forward to some feedback on that. But otherwise, just glad to be back and starting off the new year, and congrats to Win. That's awesome news. I'll pass it to Hannah.
Hello, sorry, yeah, I just popped in. I was having some issues with my Zoom.
Hannah, we're doing go-arounds. So we introduce ourselves. We have any updates you have, any trashy updates we call them, and any agenda additions that you'd like to add.
Okay.
So
yeah, well, my name's Hannah Happich. I'm a first-year PhD student at UC Riverside, but I've been working with Andrew Gray and Win for the past 4 years through my undergraduate as well. Yeah, I don't really have any updates at the moment. I've been working with Win at the Moore Institute on the trash validation portal. But yeah.
Thanks, Hannah. Could you pass to another person in the group? I think, let's see, or I'll do it because you just hopped on.
Okay.
Diego.
Sure. Thanks, Win, and congrats. Yeah, Diego Sancho Villegas. I'm with Save the West Coalition, a coastal conservation nonprofit that has a citizen science app to report different threats to the coast, among which is trash, as we all know. I don't have a huge amount of updates right now. I think we've been super busy with all the craziness that's been going on in the coast, especially around some of our, like Santa Cruz and some of the places where we work more closely. And obviously there's been tons of trash of very different varieties with these past few storms. So yeah, we're kind of just working on that and looking at a lot of the more on the erosion side as well. So nothing on trash, but I'm looking forward to hearing more about Julian's portal. I know Julian, we talked about your portal a while back, so I'm excited to hear where that's going to be or where that's at on next week. And I'll pass it to Ray.
Yeah, thanks. Congratulations, Win. So I'm Ray Smith. I'm at the US EPA in the Office of Research and Development, and I'm in Cincinnati. So we're all concerned about all you folks getting too much water there in California. It's making the news every night, just how much you're getting. So I'm working on a polypropylene recycling study, and did a draft of that in September, and I'm still updating it. So I guess part of that is a material flow analysis. So what's going through products of polypropylene and what becomes trash is of interest in that material flow analysis. So if anyone has information out there about that, I'd be happy to receive it and reference it and add it to what we're doing. So I think that's my update. I could pass it to, I haven't heard Tony's voice yet. So how about Tony?
Ray, on that, just before Tony, sorry, I just posted a link in the chat to this website called MatWeb, where they have all of this materials data, like all these plastic properties from producers. So producers, when they make like a polypropylene, they report the density of the polypropylene, the hardness, all this kind of stuff. And I don't know if this would be useful for your material flow analysis. It depends on if you're like incorporating physics, but I think there could be something useful to gain from that information for your work. There may be some ways that you can kind of draw parallels to fill in gaps that you're missing. I don't know why I didn't think about this before when you had brought this up, but.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I clicked on the link, so I'll look at it later.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Again, Wynn, congrats on your engagement. I remember 25 years ago, I made a trip to Ireland and my wife joined me out there and I proposed. So good things come around. Quick trashy update. Just a reminder to people that we did forward a message that was forwarded to Margaret, who often joins this group, about a NIST a conference that's about trash monitoring data standards or intercomparability of different standards. So you can see in your email if you have any questions about that. It's NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, of course, and the conference is January 24th through 26th. So it could be of interest to you. No guarantees, not sure, can't vouch for it, but it might be worth looking into if you're interested in this type of thing, which since you're here, I assume you might be. Let's see, still remaining, Tom, Dr. Novotny, can you share your update, please?
Hi, good morning, and congratulations to Wynn too. And I went to Brazil 16 years ago and got engaged there. I'm glad you didn't wait until you were in your 50s like I did. So anyway, good job on that. I got a lot of things to update on, and I'll try to be brief. But Walter, I do want to talk to you about Keep America Beautiful and their involvement in the Caltrans, and maybe we can have an another talk maybe later this week or next week. And also, I'm interested to know what the proportion of trash is that ends up as a result of tobacco product waste, because we're working on this economic project that I think many of you know about to try to cost out what the burden of tobacco product waste is to communities. And we're moving ahead on that, although it's difficult to get sort of cost data from various jurisdictions, which we're trying to do now. We did get a piece of data that's interesting. It's the total tobacco sales in the major markets here, in tobacco product sales in the major markets here in California from the Nielsen Corporation, which tracks, business activities, and we were able to purchase. And so we'll have a sense of what the actual volume of stuff that's actually sold here in California that could end up as trash, which is going to be part of our thinking. The project's moving along, and interestingly, and I may have mentioned this last time, but Baltimore City is actually suing the tobacco industry for the cost of tobacco product waste. They've got data from their Mr. Trash Wheel device that goes into the Baltimore Inner Harbor and cleans up stuff, and they're actually able to ferret out what the tobacco product waste is as part of that. EPR, you mentioned that there's a couple of countries in Europe that are using EPR principles to get funding from the tobacco industry for cleanup, Spain and France. There's some problems with that, if you want to get into that a little bit later, given that the industry becomes involved in it. This SDSU, where I am, has established a Center for Tobacco and the Environment, and we're applying for a grant from the Tobacco-Related Disease Research Program run by the UC system that will fund a policy center as part of that will focus on tobacco and the environment, and has potential applications, for this group as well. And then let's see. I think I mentioned previously the plastics treaty that's now being engaged internationally. One meeting was held at the end of November of a sort of a planning group, and that'll be a 2-year process that goes forward under the auspices of the United Nations Environment Program. And so a bunch of us anti-tobacco advocates are participating in that to make sure that plastic filters are included in that process of regulation. So anyway, a lot of stuff going on, and I'll turn it. I don't know if there's anybody else that's hasn't yet spoken, Tony, but
A couple more, yeah. Yeah, Julian, I don't think you've gone yet.
I think Julian did go.
Yeah, I did just briefly.
Oh, sorry. Jana, did you go?
Yeah, I
think-
went.
I think we
You
covered
went?
everyone.
Sorry, I must have spaced out. I didn't take notes on those. Sorry. Okay. Thanks.
Do we have, looking at the agenda, just really quickly, when put together this agenda, do people have any other additions they would like to add, either for today or for future talk? Hearing none, Wynn, maybe we should move on to the first of the structured agenda item.
Sweet, thanks. So the first one is the water data challenge. So we submitted our data portal for the water data challenge. It was a bit of a mad dash at the end there. It was due today. We just submitted yesterday. And the water data challenge is run by the California EPA. They're trying to, advance open source projects in the state, open data use in the state. And the water data challenge, basically what you do is you form a team, and then that team, Hannah was on our team, creates a product and then submits that. And they'll vote on these. There's no like monetary prize or anything. It's just bragging rights if we win. But this is the microplastics data portal, and currently what this project is a data validation app, and I'm looking for feedback on this right now. So we are trying to develop this so that it can be used for even more than microplastics, so that it can be used for trash, other data needs, because we see this as a real gap currently. There's not like a data validation platform that's open source, that's transparent how it works. And so we're using this for microplastics currently, but it's not limited to that. So anyways, I'll drop the link in the chat. I was hoping we could have a little bit of time, people just like kind of share their reactions, or any like feedback, positive or negative. Feel free to like add into the comments or to the chat, or just raise your hand. But I'll give you all like a demo of this real quick. I think I've shared this in the past, but it's definitely like come a long way since then. So basically what you have is a rules file. So here we have these rules files, upload a rules file, and then you upload a data set. So this is valid data. And this is what the valid, like if it's a validated data set based on these rules, then you get this message, success. You can download a certificate. That certificate basically is verifiable. So this is like kind of saved. These certificates are saved in our database. So then if you said, hey, I used your app, it told me the data was valid at this time, I would be able to verify that using these certificates. Then if it's invalid, basically what you get is this. So invalid data here. Now you get an error, and then you get this little report of what those errors are. So here, We have shape can only be fibers or fragments. So here in the shape column in the data set, there's some NA values, some other things that aren't formatted correctly. Source can only be tap water or bottled water. There's some other values in this source. We also have, I haven't added this in yet, but there's like a login feature where you can upload a key. And when you upload that key, basically what it allows you to do is it allows you, when your data is valid and you upload it here, it allows your data to go automatically to data.ca.gov. We, of course, we like control these keys. We only give them to people who are supposed to have this access. But we are hoping that next time that you search microplastic on data.ca.gov, that you're going to see tons of different data sets in here. Currently, SFEI was the first group to upload any data to data.ca.gov. It was a humongous effort that they like really just did an extremely thorough job on the data science to make this happen. Now, thanks to the groundwork that they laid, we're able to kind of streamline sharing microplastics data. We have some data sets, and those data sets are up here, and we have rules. And basically, one of these will be straight from this data validation portal. You will have a data, a data set that all of the validated data sets that where somebody has like a valid key where they're allowed to have access to share their data up here. They'll all go into one place. So it'll be, I think it's going to be in this one, microplastics drinking water from accredited labs. I'm still like fleshing this out, but as you can see, we're doing this all in the open, trying to be transparent that this is like pretty alpha. You know, it's like, this is early. It hasn't been super thoroughly reviewed yet, but it's a work in progress. But we want people to be able to use it and collaborate with us and have discussions with us. So I'll pause there if people have questions. Oops.
It's very impressive, Win, and I look forward to having some SPI staff kind of bang on your alpha version to provide some feedback. And as you pointed out, they've uploaded different microplastic and understand some of the challenges in doing so. I think they'd be very good test cases for your system.
When I had a question, this is super cool, and I'm thinking about like what you mentioned, possibly adapting it to trash, and I think it'd be a really useful component of our data ingestion portal to do validation. Is there any way that it could be automated? Like, is there a way to provide like a web service version, or is it all like manual upload and clicking the buttons?
Like an API that you could link to or something like that.
Yeah, some kind of machine to machine.
Yeah, we totally could do that. It's not currently configured for that. I need to think through what the easiest steps are. What use case are you thinking of?
Well, we're you know, trying to accept data from all kinds of different groups who have and trying to kind of format it all in a way that is consistent and that you can aggregate. So we do need rules, and I haven't talked to Ying yet about how exactly we're doing that, but I have a feeling that this would help. So I just kind of want to put that out there, and I know you haven't developed it for trash yet, but it could be, we'll just kind of keep that on the back burner for now. Go ahead.
We could totally add in, so I can show you real quick what these rules files look like. We could totally make a rules file for your trash data, and then people could use this tool to validate their data, and then we could send you that validated data or upload it to data.ca.gov or whatever you want to do with it. It's just a CSV file where I'll open this in Excel so that it like looks easier. And I've been like banging these out lately, so I'd be happy to like make these rules for your data. That would be a really cool collaboration. Basically, we just have these R codes that just define like, oh, shape needs to be fibers or fragments. Source needs to be these two. So they're pretty simple. And yeah, I'd be really excited to explore that. Let me know if you want to talk more about that.
Cool, thanks. And then just one thought on the feature of uploading it to the California water data portal. Are you limiting the input or the uses to just California researchers, or because of that data
I don't think
upload
so.
feature?
No, no, we actually already have data that's up here that's for the whole world.
Okay.
So yeah. The
Good to know.
first data set that we added onto this was general microplastics in drinking water from peer-reviewed studies around the world. It just needs to be related to, like, somehow related to what California's priorities are, right? Like, it can't, I feel like the data.ca.gov portal, as long as we're putting data there that's helping their policies and helping the state grow in some way, like, I think it's fair game.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
One quick question on the value of the cert that you issue when something has passed the validation. So
Right.
I think it's really awesome that you do that, and also that you log it. I see the value of having that feedback, but I guess I wonder, how do you know if the file, what version of the file has been validated? So how does the cert attach to a file? Does it have a hash, or does it check length? Does it check anything other than name, a unique name of the file?
Right. Yeah. Right now, the certificate has a hash of the data, a hash of the rules, data on what version of the package is being used, and then a web hash, which is basically like the exact state of the interface at that time. So that's what we have. So, like, if you uploaded the same data set, I would be able to see that it's the same data set without doing much additional work, because the hash would be the same.
Yeah.
But if you uploaded the same rules, I'd be able to see that it's the same.
That's great. Yeah, that was what I was interested in, that, because what we've found when we've created tools like this is that it's very critical to understand the versions of things, because someone might upload one version and then fix it and then upload the next version. It's the same file, it's just been tweaked. And so understanding which version you're dealing with is so important.
Yeah. Okay.
And to Julian's question about using an API to call the validation, I think one of the things that we might want to tackle in the future, maybe as part of like a dedicated discussion, is it's almost like we need to have a discussion about the value of centralization versus the value of distributed models, because that sort of thing where, Julian, you might need to call that central management, that central validation system, would be really important if it were complicated to maintain a central repository of rules. However, another model that we could follow is where that rules system that Win just has created ends up, because it's open source, it could be just like handed to someone and built into your portal potentially. So you don't need to like engineer an API call to a central location. But another thing that we may wish to pursue, I'm thinking about NIST, right, where they're establishing standards that are durable, that can be applied anywhere, and people like US EPA and RAE are interested in having these kind of universal standards, that may be having a central repository where there are rules that people can rely on, that don't change willy-nilly as one organization wants it to. So there's a kind of advantage to centralization in one sense, but the more you centralize, then the more access points you need to furnish, right? You need to provide the API access. You need to provide the UI, and sometimes the UI makes sense, sometimes API makes sense. But kind of the more you centralize, the easier access you need to furnish, but you don't necessarily need to provide all those access points if you distribute the tools broadly, right? So anyway, that's getting in the weeds of like different technology choices, but it has a lot to do with what kinds of standards we want to apply to these things and how firmly we want to lock down certain things. So when you pulled up that thing and you said like the type needs to be fibers or particles or whatever, you know, then do we want that to be like a durable standard, or can anyone just kind of like set their rules as they wish? That's something that would be great to have that discussion and the pros and cons of each approach. And usually, just in my experience, it ends up spinning off. You know, people will take their thing and run with it. And you know, we've talked with Walter and you, Win, about the AI tools that you've created to identify trash, and they're so amazing, and it represents like significant investment to get it going, and it has that great UI. But again, then we want the API if it's going to be centralized, and we want it to improve over time with additional investment. And so it's about kind of deciding, do we want to centralize things, or do we want to spin things off and it doesn't necessarily improve the whole because everyone is kind of doing their own thing. So anyway, that's like it's a big discussion, and it touches on a lot of what we do, where we spin off and it allows for independent innovation, but does the innovation kind of make its way back to the whole effort, the collective effort?
Right. Yep. No, it's really, really good.
But none of that is to diminish what you've shown, Win, and the value of that. None of it is to diminish the request that Julian made about like, can we do an API call? All of that is great, and those could be very viable approaches.
Yeah. I'll add that to a next step for future discussion. We'll have like a topic discussed about that, like how do we collaborate with each other on all of these cool projects that we're working on best.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on that, Tony, because I think that's a real central issue, right? And it cuts across consolidation of all different types of data. And I feel like I've kind of encountered it in one form or another here and there. And I think whichever path is ultimately chosen, that this distributed model of you know, everybody doing their own thing, that always seems like a decent starting point, right? And then you just sort of iterate forward from there to try to find that sweet spot. The consequence being it's just more work, right, for the individual, the more distributed it is, or for users of the data, compared to a more centralized where you're locking down standards. The data can just be used together more easily. It feels like once you get to some threshold of actual centralization, there's a gatekeeper, there's somebody, right? I remember Swamp had a whole person that was responsible for maintaining the lookup lists, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not there's an addition to the lookup list. It's once you get to that point, it's like it seems like, okay, now additional resources are going to be required. So it makes sense to take the steps up to that point. So it seems like it seems like a perfect place to start where you are now.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think also because we've made this open source, it allows us to be flexible in case like we're not locked in to, let's say that we all decide right now, we want to centralize, we want to focus in, we want to put our resources into this platform and develop it. We're not locked into that. If let's say, you know, I switch fields or something like that, or, you know, the Moore Institute can't support this anymore. Anybody could take the source code and repurpose it for their own use. So I think that's one of the beauties of open source, is that it doesn't necessarily lock us into either or with the centralization versus distributed, because we can be flexible with that. And we all, by contributing to the open source code, we're all contributing to something that's a shared good. Let me check if there's any hands up or anything. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to add to that discussion, or comments, other comments about the data validation portal, or questions?
I guess one question I have when is about audience for the data validation portal.
Uh-huh.
So it looks very well set up and the UI makes sense. I think it's as easy as it could be, but I could also see people who are, let's say, community-based scientists not understanding what it's doing or how to develop rules that work for their purposes. So do you imagine that there needs to be someone of some minimum skill level to kind of be a mediator, if you will, to be able to enhance this rule set or be the one to actually do those submissions? I guess, how would you characterize the user of that tool? Because I suspect it's not just everyone, the general public.
Yeah. Right now, it's focused on accredited labs who are doing microplastics analysis. And one other group we're working with is the National NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab. They're doing this big survey across all the rivers for trash and microplastics. And so we're going to create like a rule set for them. And that would be like field practitioners who are submitting their data. So currently we don't have the citizen science kind of use case built in. I'm sure that will create a different type of structure that would be ideal for that. And it could even be like, you need to like have two interfaces where like when people go to the homepage, it says like, are you a citizen science practitioner or like a data expert? And you get different like platforms for different ones. But I'm imagining the rules files will not be able to be created by anybody that doesn't have like at least intermediate level experience with R programming language, because that's what all the rules are written in. And the rules I've found, even with people with kind of like basic level experience, are difficult to write. But once you have the rules file, you just copy it in and you just upload it. So anybody can do that part, but to like adapt the rules, you would need to have somebody who's a data expert, really.
Yeah, so that is really great to know, Wynn, and it makes complete sense that microplastics would be lab focused, because microplastics is not at this point a community-based monitoring practice, right? You just can't get into that. So that makes perfect sense. So I guess going back to what Julian mentioned about kind of how might this be used more broadly with macro plastics and other macro trash, that it might be a kind of almost a different spin-off of that same overall technology, but maybe a different UI. And also, I'm wondering how much the rules can be derived from the work you've already done with OpenSpeci and the taxonomy work that we all did together. If there were a way to kind of at least some aspect of the rules could, if we go to the larger trash world, like if you can just kind of almost distill all of those synonym-based things into a rule set, would that break the system? Because the rule set would be too expansive.
Yeah, I know. I think that'd be a great way to do it. And we're currently building out a microplastic taxonomy that will be the rule set for microplastics in drinking water. Those will be like the required values. So yeah, I think that does make sense. And if once we start expanding the trash, we would just use that same kind of system, I think.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, any other comments, questions? I have some other things to jump into too. So if you have any other ideas or thoughts of synergies, please let me know. We're also having every week, starting in a couple weeks, we're gonna have 3-hour hack sessions for the data portal. Currently, we have about like 5 different people who show up to these. And basically this time is just for us to all work together on developing code, a lot like how Code for America does their work together. And I've been kind of training people to use R and to do app development and stuff like that too. So if that kind of thing interests you, get in touch. And all right, so trashy open source meme think tank. So this one's a kind of fun one. Before we do that, actually, maybe we'll talk about the time change. Would people prefer a different time? I don't know. You want to like give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or something in your yeah, okay. No, like this one, or maybe add a comment in. I'm just trying to get like a poll, or maybe I can create a poll even.
So maybe when just we do a vote, like is this time good for people, and people either say yes or no.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Is another yeah. So
Okay.
if this time is good for you, can you vote yes? If it's
Just
not,
like, right,
vote
yes.
no.
Yeah, in the chat or something like that, or yeah,
There's a
or you can-
little yes symbol or a no symbol under reaction. It stays up as long as it needs to. I think it's good for me.
Okay. Okay.
Looks like there are no no's so far. So
Yeah.
I think
It's looking
when
pretty
you may have
yes.
created a monster by changing the time to suit your German trip, but it seems like this looks to be a good time for people.
Okay, great. Well, that's good to know. We don't need to worry about it then. Thanks, y'all. It works for me too. So I just wanted to make sure. I know some people are like, this is the 9 a.m. No way. Like I need to go way out of my way to pull this off. So it's good to know that we're not doing that to folks right now. Cool. So okay, fun thing. I recently realized that a lot of people in research and in policy actually don't like see the value of open source. It's not kind of like, it doesn't like motivate them or inspire them in the same way that open data does today. A lot of people, I feel like most people understand the value of open data. Even if they are for or against it, they kind of like get it. But the open source thing is kind of new. And I'm thinking that it's gonna end up being kind of commonplace, where we're talking about open source code and why isn't the code transparent? And we all kind of agree upon that there's a lot of value in making code open source, but I'm having a hard time conveying that to people in a way. So for the Water Data Challenge, for example, we tried to make a press release about the fact that our data portal was put into policy. It's one of the first ever open source softwares that was specifically written into a policy on anything for the state, which is super exciting. But we like the news wasn't like, oh wow, this is hot stuff, you know, like nobody wanted to take it on. They were just like, open source, like what's that, who cares? And so I'm thinking, like, what if we made some open source memes to kind of like educate people and get people excited about open source. So if people have ideas, maybe we could like talk through them and put them in the chat and stuff. And I will try to create these memes with our group at the Moore Institute and with our funders who are really big into creating media stuff. And then we'll start sharing them around like social media and on our pages and everything like that. So I'd really appreciate any help. I know like Gary, we had during one of our previous projects, we had this whole pun, trashy puns part of the project. So I was thinking this group would be great for thinking of trashy memes for open source.
I mean, along those lines of open source and trash, you could say, you know, is open source code complete garbage? Yes, it's trash, you know. I'm not sure how flattering that is.
I love it. I'm writing it down.
Good one. There's another few in there. I'm positive. There's one at the tip of my brain. I know. I'm gonna keep thinking about it.
Yeah, keep thinking about it. We don't need to like figure it all out right now, too. Thanks, Ray. Say, as you said, is open source. Sorry, what'd you say again, Tony?
Is open source code absolute garbage? Yes, it's trash. It needs more refinement, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's a
but
good
it's on
start
its way.
I was thinking of like this is like a Lord of the Rings reference, like Gollum, you know, hoarding like the ring of power. Have like a photo of that, and then like closed source software. You know. Some other things kind of like educational we've tried. So like open source and open data, really, you can boil it down to like a recipe, like making a cake, because the ingredients are the data, the recipe is the source code. There's some other like kind of abstractions you can make from this too, but I was thinking of like what Julia Child, have like Julia Child, and she's got like the recipe here, and then like all the ingredients out in front of her, and then it's like open source code, open data, you know.
Yeah, I think that's not bad.
Okay.
You know, one thing to bear in mind that I think is a really good way to explain the value of open source. One way it was explained to me like 20 years ago is, I guess it wouldn't have been 20 years ago, it'd be more like 10. Do you remember the rover that was going to Mars, but it crashed because someone had a unit conversion issue in their calculation?
I don't remember it.
Yeah, so you know, like we have these rovers that land on Mars and then explore, and there was supposed to be one, but it actually did a nosedive into the planet's surface because someone didn't convert like meters to feet or something like that, so they were off by a
Oh, shoot.
And that was a product of closed source. It could have been caught, and it should have been caught, but because it was closed, this multi-billion-dollar investment was blown to smithereens. So what you could do is to have side by side a rocket running into the ground to say like closed source, and then a nice parachuting you know vehicle landing on Mars saying open source. So
okay, I love it. Any other kind of like, how do you all explain open source to people, you know, when you're trying to get other people kind of excited about this in your work, or the contrast between open data and stuff like that? I feel like that's kind of where the memes happen.
The way I usually talk about it is by talking about the CMS wars of 2006. So
what are those?
Way back in 2006, there were a lot of different content management systems for web-based content. Microsoft had its own, Norton and other, you know, big corporations had their own. And ultimately what won out were open source solutions, Drupal, Joomla, WordPress, etc. Now it's hard to find any other closed source options for content management systems. And it's because they offered superior evolution and adaptation over time, and also a certain cost benefit as well. So it offered adaptability, flexibility, and harnessing ideas from around the globe much more efficiently than when you have closed source products. So that's a whole ecosystem where it's almost like this natural experiment where you put closed source, open source into the same system, and open source one handily, and
Right.
continued to thrive.
Oh, that's awesome. Maybe we could overlay that with like, you know, some like Star Wars reference where like some group is just like getting whooped by the other group. Maybe like a Clone Wars thing. I'm not sure. I'm imagining like open source is kind of like these like clone army just like in the millions, and then you have just like 10 people over here.
The problem is that in Star Wars we root for the 10 people, not the clone army necessarily. As far as I understand it, we're voting for like the Jedi, who are like 2 against a million. You know?
Maybe some of the like bad parliament people, you know, or the people who are like the part of the government when it gets corrupt one of the times. Maybe that would work. I don't know.
I guess, you know, the thing that we should acknowledge though, Wynn, is that open source has won in complete and I think it's something to celebrate actually. Open source is dominant in certain sectors. So in content management systems, in application servers, things like Apache, Nginx, etc. Those things are the standard. They're not the exception. So there are, and then databases. It used to be that you would have Microsoft and Oracle were the databases. These days, they're kind of dwarfed by Postgres and MySQL. So there are a number of different projects and different whole spheres where open source is the dominant standard, so it's not the Jedi versus the Horde. It's actually we are the Horde.
Yeah, just already, completely taken over. Yeah. No, that's a great perspective to add.
Yeah. So
I'll think
just
about
to point out that
that
it's not, you don't have to make such a fierce argument anymore because there are sectors that are completely dominated by open source.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I'll think about how to make that one into. I think there's like kind of lots of layers and ways that you can look at this and kind of educate people on like the nuances of open source, because it seems like sometimes people just like still today like kind of gloss over, you know, and I'm like, I get it if you don't code, like then you wouldn't really see the value in it because you don't you don't use it in your everyday life. But when you're doing code and you're like relying on open source code to do your job every day, then it's like, whoa, like if I had more of this, if I had better of this, I would be so much more effective. So maybe that's something too.
Yeah.
And when maybe that is the core of, like you explained at the beginning, some difficulty in communicating this value. And as you just said, if you don't code, it's hard to see the value.
Yeah.
Most people don't code.
Yeah.
so you have to come up with these creative ways to communicate that value. I think Tony came up with a bunch of really good ones there. And the one that is most relevant to me day to day is I guess that ecosystem and that speed of adaptation to the needs of the market, right? The market being the market of users of the tools. And so R is, I think, a fantastic example of that. It's not necessarily dominant in the marketplace, right? There's other statistical software packages that do all kinds of fancy, cool things. But anytime you need something that's very specific, right? You can often find somebody in that ecosystem that has tried to deal with the same problem. And that's really valuable if you're somebody that's down in the weeds.
Yeah. So true. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, this is way too specific for anybody to develop the package on this. And then it's like, oh yeah, they've totally figured it out and it works really well.
But a meme sounds like a good way to for that broader audience, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, well, we're about at time. If anybody thinks of any other trashy memes, would totally appreciate you sending them along. But happy to see everybody here. Next time, I think we're gonna talk with Julian about the dashboard. And maybe we'll circle back to this, how to collaborate with each other best too. So,
Julian, do you call it a dashboard or a portal?
Kind of both. They're actually two separate things, but I'll try and do both.
okay.
Great, great.
Full end to end.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you
Thanks,
all very
everyone.
much. Great to
Thank
see you
you.
as usual.
Bye.
Bye.
See you, everybody.